Ready to go, Kevin?
Yes, we are.
We're going to get them both in the shot or just one at a time?
Both? I will pan.
Perfect, thanks.
All right.
Well, Carolyn and Stavros, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy campaign schedule to join us this afternoon. Technically, it's afternoon by about 5 minutes. Again, my name is John Paris. I'm the chair of the Asian American Group's Endorsement Committee. To my right, to my left, we have Mike Viswani, our president of the Asian American Group for the last 20 or so years, and to my left is Kevin Fung, our executive vice president. We have been doing interviews for purposes of primary and general elections for approximately the last 7 years. I know we've interviewed both of you on separate occasions in the past as well, so you're familiar with us. Just so you know, we will be releasing our endorsements probably sometime within the next week or so. We will be having a makeup day for the individuals who could not be present this afternoon, this morning and this afternoon. That's probably going to be sometime in the middle of next week, and we want to release our endorsements sometime hopefully next weekend. We realize early voting is on the horizon for everyone. Once we release our endorsements, not only will we inform the individuals who we are endorsing, but also we will be taking out ad space in various local periodicals and essentially putting out a slate card. For purposes of your race and most other races, we will be endorsing 2 people through the primary. Assuming it goes to a general election, we will then probably have the individuals who made it through the primary come back in, interview them again, and then do 1 individual for purposes of the general election. That having been said, we're going to start with our first question. Since we are a chivalrous group, we will start with you, Carolyn. Why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time? And obviously, Stavros, you will have an opportunity to answer that next as well.
Having finished the work I set out to do when I started in 2011, focusing on many issues, but of course we were in the depths of the recession. And so a great deal has been accomplished over these past 3.5 years. I'm passionate about the city. I am a registered nonpartisan and believe that my job is to do what's best for the whole of the city of Las Vegas without partisan politics being pushed into the middle of it. And there's a great deal still to do. We've really come a long way in these 3.5 years. And much to brag about, but much more to do, especially in the area of jobs and our homeless issues, working together and continuing on, most importantly, the safety issue and my passion for more cops, which galvanized with the other 4 municipal leaders, the mayors, all believing in the same issue, that you don't have a safe community, you don't have a community that anybody will invest in. And then also, of course, working with the school district before and after school programs, working. Does that mean stop?
No, that means it's our BS detector. Okay. It just went off there. That's the weirdest thing.
I mean, I've been on those.
Please continue.
It really is. It's so much. It's about medical care, quality medical care here. We came here in 1964. There were less than 100,000 people here. Clark County School District was number 2 in the country. People who had medical issues over the past 15, 20 years would most often go to the airport, go to MD Anderson, Mayo, working very closely with the medical community all these years, and now have an opportunity to bring the UNLV Medical School into the heart of downtown. I have a son who works at the Cancer Institute, as well as does research, and I had asked, going back to Bob Maxon, make sure that you go ahead and start doing research in this community. So it's medical care, quality medical care, safety medical care, our education, creating jobs, going around the country and talking about jobs. I sit on a lot of different committees that you can see on my card that I brought. U.S. Conference of Mayors, brought the U.S. Conference of Mayors back here, all to create energy and economic growth here, jobs for those who have been out of work all of this time. Then working with transportation, working very closely with NDOT, was back speaking with the Amtrak people as well, and when are we going to get that piece of our transportation, looking at how we connect downtown and bring people back and forth from the east side of the railroad tracks into our wonderful Smith Center. And of course the Smith Center, when you look at the downtown area, especially in the heart of Symphony Park, what's happened in these past 3.5 years, the Smith Center is open, has over 1 million visitors already. So far, we've seen the growth and expansion on the horizon for the Cleveland Clinic, Lou Ruvo Institute for Brain Health. We've just had the biggest World Market Center ever, having their convention here, which they do with High Point, North Carolina. Our premium outlets, and I've been meeting with them on a regular basis, are expanding to open in April or May. We've streamlined the business application process, licensing, we're online, and there's so much more. We need to do a great deal in wards 1, 3, and 5. Our most challenged areas, our suburbs, are pretty good, our suburban areas. Ward 6 has had the #1 foreclosure rate in the entire country. It's beginning to come back, but there's a real energy out there. Our homeless population, I've been working very closely with the people in the Veterans field and with Arnold Stalk, who opened the Veterans Village back 3 years ago. In fact, we support that personally on a personal level. I brought together all the nonprofit CEOs, or the top CEOs in Southern Nevada, because the federal government was in gridlock and there was no funding. We were cut back so far, and have worked with these CEOs who come together every month to meet and work as a group. United Way, Catholic Charities, Jewish Federation, Goodwill, HAND, there are just so many. So that's another piece. All of this needs to continue. We've made huge strides. We've gone from 14.1% unemployment in the state and seen the same reflection in the South. We're now at 6.1. But it's all about creating jobs, and it's being involved in the community. I sit on so many committees, but I'd like to get my hands into things.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm sorry, I was kind of off camera, was kind of ringing the bell again. We do need to keep things balanced between.
And it's not fair, and I know that, so that just hand up and I'll stop, because the other day I was interviewed another group and they said, tell us why you should be re-elected, and I spoke straight for 45 minutes. So just do this with me.
Somehow I believe that. Stavros, why have you decided to run for mayor at this point in time?
You know, John, I think the tipping point for me was when Councilman Beers and I decided to put a resolution on the City Council to allow the people to vote for this publicly funded stadium, and the mayor and a majority of the City Council decided not to allow the folks to vote on it. And it was just it was a point where I decided that this race is really about the next 4 years. And what happened was, I'm sure all of you have been following it, the mayor and a majority of the City Council supported a publicly funded stadium, putting about $100 million into a $200 million stadium. $30 million was coming out of the park fund, $30 million was coming out of infrastructure, another $40 million was the appraised value for the land. And the people didn't want that. I've never received so many phone calls and emails and public resentment for supporting something like that. And when it was approved, like I said, we decided to put it on, and the City Council said no, the people are not going to be allowed to vote on it. And we had to go out at the last minute and gather petitions. We gathered 2,500 petitions. They told us that's what we needed, and when we did that in about 3 days, they told us it was 8,500 signatures. We gathered that. We went to turn it in. They told us it was a day earlier that we had to turn it in. We finally turned in 9,500 signatures. 9,500 people showed up, found us to sign a document saying they were against this publicly funded stadium. And then they went through the vetting process and they said we didn't have enough signatures. So then we had to go to court, and we had to get a district court judge to rule in our favor. And all that just really left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And I decided that really this is going to be about, like I said, the next 4 years. And during the next 4 years, I don't want to chase a publicly funded stadium anymore. I do not want to do that. I don't want to spend a minute on a stadium unless somebody wants to come downtown and build it themselves. So I want to start focusing on things that are important. I want to start focusing on a medical district downtown. I want to start focusing on bringing the UNLV Medical School downtown. I want to start focusing, instead of putting $30 million of money out of a park fund into a stadium, I want to put it into parks. And I just recently asked our city manager to put together a plan, a master plan, for finding the parts of Las Vegas that don't have very good parks, where people cannot walk to a park and take their kids there to play, take their dogs for a walk, go there to exercise. We are lacking in that area, and I don't want to divert that money away from parks into a stadium. So I want to focus on our neighborhoods. I want to focus on bringing high-tech jobs downtown. I want to focus on the Cashman Center and completely redoing the Cashman Center. So that's the reason I ran for mayor, is because I want to change really the culture and what the city council thinks is important for the next 4 years. And then as far as it's set up today, I'll just do one term and then I'll move on to something else unless the Supreme Court changes their mind. But that's the reason I'm running for mayor.
Well, obviously, the question of public money being used for potentially privately funded, what ought to be privately funded endeavors in many people's eyes, is going to arise again and again and again for time immemorial. What metrics, and this question will be for Stavros and then back to Carolyn, what metrics do you plan on focusing on to make the determination if using public monies is for the benefit of the public and is a worthwhile endeavor?
Well, the Smith Center is a perfect example. First of all, most of the tax funding for the Smith Center came from an additional tax on rental cars. So that's not coming out of a park fund. That's not coming out of infrastructure fund. That's actually being paid by tourists who rent a car. So that's number one. Number two is if you go down to the Smith Center and you walk inside and you look on the walls of the Smith Center, there are hundreds of people on that wall that have donated their own money to the Smith Center. So there was absolute 100% public support for something like the Smith Center, which did have public dollars. The soccer stadium had zero support from the public. And if the public doesn't support it, why would I support spending their tax dollars when they want to spend someplace else? So that's going to be, I'm going to listen to what the folks have to say, and if I'm talking about something that involves their tax dollars and they say we are absolutely against it, then I'm going to listen to that. So those are the things I'm going to take into consideration. And you know, we have things like visual improvement grants that we give small businesses, but these are tax dollars, about $50,000 maximum, tax dollars to help a small business, somebody who doesn't have enough money to open up a business, to visually improve the outside. Those are some great things we can do, but to give $100 million to a company like the Cordish company, who's worth billions of dollars, just seems crazy. So that's the things that I'm going to think about if I'm the mayor when it comes to the public and the private coming together to do something. And is it for the public good? Is it for something that the public wishes that they have? Those are some of the elements of my decision making.
Okay. Carolyn, what metrics would you focus on when making those decisions in the future?
Well, it's all evaluative. Obviously, everything we would wish that everybody would come in from around the country and around the world on a private basis and fund everything we know we need to have done. But we have an area of town, the old area, which is wards 1, 3, and 5. Down by UMC is 1, where we've lived for 38 years. 3 is predominantly the east side of town, predominantly. And then 5 is the old west side and going a bit north. It changes a little bit the demographics as we go through these redistrictings. But as you look at wards 2 and 4 in particular, they are somewhat healthy areas. And when people come in to invest, they're looking at it, and because it's a healthy area, one would expect it, and partially we see it in 6 now too. People are coming in and totally funding. They don't need the same support and financial help that down in a deteriorated area of 1, 3, and 5. Because of the fact during, oh goodness, the past 20 years, the core of our city, much like every other city, has been crime-ridden, and boarded up buildings, prostitution, drugs. People would not come into the downtown. And not only wouldn't they come, but they wouldn't invest in the downtown. So much like the good governor has done to bring Tesla in up to the north where nothing's happening, he has created tax incentives to bring Tesla in up there. Well, that's the same theory that has been espoused for the past 15 years or longer in the core of the city, trying to bring it back to its healthy essence. And there are many ways you can do it. We've now been granted new markets tax credits. We can create tax incentive financing, as is done up there in Tesla. We can create these smaller issues of the VIP and the Quick Start program that we have. But for a private group to come in and invest in the core of our city, one would have to bring buildings up to code first before they'll invest. The 61 acres that are Symphony Park was a railroad yard that was poisonous earth, and the city had to invest money. It was worth nothing. Something that's vacant isn't worth anything if it's in the very core of a blighted area. So what you want to do is put money into it to make it a saleable piece and sometimes create tax incentives. So what has happened was we fixed up the land on the 61 acres, and the first to come in was Premium Outlets. And everyone said it would not work. It would not succeed. And of course it's become one of the premier outdoor malls in the entire country, to the point we're getting 36 new stores coming. Most of the buildings sit on land, and in fact, I think absolutely every one of them, there have been tax incentives to get the World Market Center going, to get the Cleveland Clinic. The land was given to them. The Smith Center has 68% of its public funding. The Mob Museum, every piece of property that's down there, and that is the way you create incentives, because you're deferring taxes. And what will happen is when they come in, there's nothing there, there's no income, there's no revenue. And if you can defer their payments to later on, then they will spur more development. One of the interesting pieces about the stadium and the contentiousness that my opponent's been talking about was we left on the table $450 million of bricks and mortar investment down there. Now, it had nothing to do with the fact that there was any contention by anybody to fund the stadium or how. From the very first moment that the Findlay group came into my office and said, you know, that arena's sitting there, we'd like to explore doing a stadium. The council agreed that if in fact the franchise group did not give us a franchise, there would be no stadium. And unfortunately, we lost that $450 million that would have been a catalyst to bring in other private investment. There are a lot of groups sitting down there on that 61 acres that have been looking at have their parcels allocated. They're on a timeline, and had that $450 million capital, hard bricks and mortar been invested, these other pieces would have opened. Right now, they're sitting back again, waiting to see what we're going to be doing. But the interest is more about being creative in tax incentives and new market tax credits, finding ways to fund and bring in private business. We all know that. I mean, I remember the days that there was nothing on Spring Mountain except Southwest Gas Corporation. And when I see what a community bonded together, and I don't know if there have been tax credits here by the county to help spur the development along Spring Mountain. But the area was so blighted that it would never have revived itself. It never would have cleaned up. And when you look at the excitement, and thank you, Tony Shea, we put money into his taking over the old City Hall building, 1,800 people. And so there's public dollar support all the way through the core of downtown, and we're very much looking and have been doing it in wards 5 and 3.
And Carolyn, that kind of dovetails with another question that we had regarding the downtown area. Obviously, Zappos did have a huge infusion, and it's really revitalized. You know, the Fremont Street. Fremont itself has expanded more eastward, I believe, and bless you, and it's continuing to grow. What do you see as the next step in that evolution of, specifically of the downtown area, to try and continue the pattern of growth that's occurred over the last 4 or 5 years? Or perhaps what plans do you have to spur that on? And obviously, Stavros, you will have a chance to respond as well.
What we've been doing over the past 4 years, and probably it started during my husband's term, is looking at major planned development. We've certainly been trying to enhance the cultural base of downtown, which we've been extremely successful in. But it's all part of the plan, and what we have done is the Neon Museum has taken root. We are in the process already of working on a major plan for the Cashman complex, and I've been speaking with the Cashman family. I'm hopeful they'll come in and give that private support as well as what we're doing. But that whole corridor going into North Las Vegas as well, the Reed Whipple Center, the Natural History Museum. We've been working very diligently and a long time to try and create and expand that cultural corridor, and then make an overall plan of what we're doing with Cashman. And Cashman, by the legislature, is operated by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the board on which I sit. And looking at what part, and it's too involved, takes up too much time to go into it. I'd be happy to come back and explain it. But that piece, how the LVCVA fits into that, they are going into a $2.5 billion expansion of the convention center as it sits now, which also includes transportation and moving people back and forth through town, as well as into the downtown. So we're very excited. We've had a lot of interest coming in from around the world looking at the Cashman complex. There's 3 parts there right now. There's the baseball field, the farm club, there's the convention space, and then there's meeting rooms as well. And so what we're going to do with that is not part of the $2.5 billion. And whether it's going to inure back to the city to operate, but that is a very critical last bastion of land in the city. It's 57 acres. We've had builders come into my office that want to put up apartments and park and do different types of things. We've had drones, interest in drones and technology going in there. That's a huge piece that's open to make a very big statement, but we have to make sure we look at everything, both sides or more sides, so when we make a decision and we include the public in the conversation, which we always do, because we are open meeting law, we are never allowed to meet any council people more than three together because it's a majority. It is our open meetings, our public comments during council, and then having pocket meetings all around. We're going to have a lot of ideas, but we want the best one. We want to be a world-class city. I grew up in the heart of Manhattan. I know what a world-class city needs, and museums are a huge piece. We right now are in discussion with a group that wants to put a modern art museum. They were looking at a different area in the downtown. They're now talking about coming into the heart of Symphony Park, because obviously we have that, and I think I've done enough. You best put your hand, I mean, you pick a subject.
I was about to cut you off, but you cut yourself off, and we appreciate that. I feel less guilty about it. Stavros, what ideas do you have to continue the revitalization of the downtown area specifically?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about what's going on downtown is that it's not being done with tax dollars. It's the private companies, private enterprises are the ones that are redoing downtown. And I know the mayor mentioned Tony Shea. Tony Shea has never asked the city for a dime in tax dollars. He's put $250 of his own money into it. He came to us and said, I want to buy your old city hall, and to tell you the truth, I would have probably given it to him if he would just said, you want it, you know, do you want it? But he actually bought the old city hall. He's putting his own money into the downtown area, and that's what is revitalizing downtown. You have small businesses that are coming downtown that are opening up. You have retail coming downtown that's opening up. You see excitement downtown, but the reason why is the private sector is doing it, and City Hall is supposed to be there to support them by not getting in their way, by not having lots of regulations, by not having lots of licensing. So the 6 years I've been on the city council, we've reduced the number of business licenses by half. We used to have some businesses that needed 3 licenses. Now, just about all of them just need 1 license. So we opened up the downtown development center at Rancho and 95, so you can go in one place instead of 5 or 6 places. A lot of the stuff we're doing is online now, so the city is responsible for continuing to make it as easy as possible for a business to come downtown and open up, because it is tough downtown. I mean, the buildings are older, to bring them up to code. I mean, I voted to, we had an agenda item talking about the energy codes and how you have to implement these new energy codes, and it's very expensive. People came to us and said, listen, we're buying these old buildings, we can't afford to put another $15,000 in to upgrade it to this level. So I actually voted, and I think it was probably unanimous, I think, to actually to give a break to these folks. So the things that I would like to do is I'd like to get the UNLV School of Business and the College of Southern Nevada to actually open up a campus downtown, because what happens is you have all these young kids that are running around downtown, they're enthusiastic about the downtown, they call it bumping into each other, they're sharing ideas, but wouldn't it be great to have a college professor down there to bump into them that has all this knowledge about opening up a business and actually helping them and mentoring them? Those are the things that we need to do. And you know, the Symphony Park, that's a great place. But that one piece of property with the stadium has been tied up for 5 years. 5 years this Cordish company had it, and nobody has been able to come to us and say, I want to build something there with my own money, because it's an exclusive agreement, and we're finally out of that exclusive agreement. We finally kicked Cordish out of Las Vegas and sent them back to Baltimore, and to see if another company can come in and actually build something on that piece of property. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
Now, I've asked every question to this panel, just like I've asked every question to almost every panel this morning. Someone else needs to jump in here. We have 2 sitting, we have the mayor and the city councilman here. I'm sure someone has something interesting to ask them.
Thank you, John. My name is Mimi Morris. I know the mayor has done a tremendous job of educating the city with the start with the middle school. However, if we're looking at the youngsters these days and teenagers, in 2010, government actually spent $20.4 billion to helping teenager mothers, teen pregnancy, and taking care of those kids. A tremendous amount of money. What? But 5 years from now, I think that if this becomes #2 city of the Latinos community, and exactly where all our tax dollars going between you two. I'm not so knowledge on what are we doing to prevent before we spend $20.4 billion?
I can answer a little piece of it.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, school district, we have no part to that. That's totally beyond the realm of city government. Although the city has been working before school and after school in many programs. But to answer you directly, the issues of what's going on in the whole world and much less, and also here, through this Mayor's Faith Initiative, we have brought together the church leaders, the Metropolitan Police Department, and volunteers to work in 6 areas: drug, family structure, teenage pregnancy, homelessness, and I can't remember the other 2, drug addiction, and there's one other one. But because the federal government has cut back so strongly on all grants, it's about us being involved, each one of us. The family and social moral structure of the country, and probably the world, is in total decay. This is not helping at all. And what we're trying to do, I'll give you one piece of information which has nothing to do with what my contender is doing either. In 1995, in 1964, the Clark County School District was number 2 in the country. We're now number 50.
Yes, sir.
The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, to which Stavros referred, has room tax dollars. There is a consolidated tax that's for the whole state. It comes from sales of liquor and clothing and everything else. It is divided up down the state by the legislature, allocated in different pockets of education. In 1995, a pie of money from room tax had everything in it: municipal government, so many other pieces, safety, Metropolitan Police Department, fire, all these pieces. There was not 1 cent in that pie given to education. In 1996, that pie started to get money for education, for kindergarten through college. Today, 39 cents of that pie is being given to education. In 1996, we were at this level in education, having been up here. We were here. We started funding education from room tax dollars of tourists, not his money, my money. We are now here. More and more money, and I can assure you, if I weren't doing something as I'm doing, and I was in education, absolutely it needs to be examined where the money is going. Not keep throwing more and more money into it, but how can that have happened? Room tax dollars in 96 and our ranking was here, and we keep throwing, we're at 39 cents and now the ranking is at the bottom.
Yes, ma'am, because I work in the hotel industry, and I do remember our tax was 9%, and we heard everybody voted that we're going to give it to the education. Now room tax is 12%. Now the customers are happy. It's hard to charge somebody, your room is $120, and now after everything you're going to pay $160.
But in reality, it's not something that would be in our area to handle at all. I mean, we are involved in after-school programming and feeding through 3 Square and before school, getting children healthy, but it really is beyond the role of the city, unfortunately. We would love to have control of the schools.
Well, Stavros, perhaps, what ideas might you have, since the city can, to a certain extent, affect before school and after school programs? How would you like to potentially either reallocate monies or perhaps put a greater focus on the programs that the city can provide for kids K through 12 to, we heard earlier, just give them some sort of diversion so they're not staring at their cell phones all day long, or they're not just going out and getting in trouble, like was so much fun when we were kids. But isn't as cool
You
now?
know, the education is always a tough topic because, like the mayor said, we really don't have much involvement in education. You have the state legislatures involved, is responsible for it, the governor is responsible for it, you have the Clark County School District that's responsible for it. It's really not in our charter. But, you know, there's still things that we can do. I mean, when it comes to education, the things that I try to do in my ward is, for example, at the beginning of the year, I'll deliver, 60 backpacks to the 10 elementary schools in my ward. Because even though I have a pretty nice ward, there's still kids out there that are showing up to school without a backpack, and that affects education. A kid that doesn't show up with a backpack just feels different. So I deliver backpacks. I started this program when I first came on to talk about teachers, because when you get discussing teachers, it ends up turning bad. The teachers are they're not doing their job, and that's a bunch of malarkey. I really love the teachers, so I started this feature a teacher program. So every year, right around May, and it's actually coming up here, is I will ask each school, elementary, middle school, to select what they consider their best teacher. And then I pick a night where I honor them, I give them a certificate, I buy a ceramic glass, apple. It's either ceramic or glass one, but it's an apple, it has their name on it. I talk about them, other teachers are there, parents are there, kids are there. So it's a kind of a way for me to tell these teachers, you're doing a great job. I mean, you really are taking care of our kids. But, when it comes to things like teenage pregnancy, those sorts of, the things that we really should really focus on our tax dollars is this $60 million park fund that we're talking about that we can bond. That money should be used for things like building a community center in a low-income area that has counselors in there for young girls to go talk to about becoming pregnant. We could build a community center or some type of a center downtown where homeless veterans can go in and get some kind of information, some type of help, somebody that they can speak to. So that's the kind of things that I want to do, is I want to spend our tax dollars on things that are right in the community, that touch somebody's life, that they're going to actually, it's going to help make their lives better.
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
Hi, Raymond.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
my name is Zoe. I'm Vice President of CAG, Chinese American Group. I like you're building a world-class city, but my personally thought your world-class city right now, during your period of time, be a mayor, you build outside of a world-class city so well. But honestly, I don't have any content inside of this beautiful outside world-class city. So could you tell me that what if you elect again, what will you put the content inside of this beautiful appearance?
And Zoe, are you looking more towards expanding from a cultural standpoint, or?
Yes, art, culture, and have more contact
Thank you.
with the
Thank you.
international.
We have been working on this for at least 4 years plus. But what we have established before I took over was the 18 blocks, 18B, which is a cultural area for all those who are interested in art and any type of art, whether it's studio art, sculpting, drama, any type of performance. We have that 18 block area actually has become 21 or 22 blocks where people can go in, open up their own gallery. We've been very much promoting the drama and performing arts, not only through the Smith Center, but through the black box theaters that we have. We have brought UNLV down to our 5th Street School, where the Graduate School of Architecture now exists. another type of art and culture. We also have the Clark County, well, it's no longer that, the Community College of Southern Nevada is in our own building of City Hall in the building. And what we are trying to do is give more and more opportunity to the talented people that are here, having shows and galleries and art performance, different types of performing arts, concentrating. Reed Whipple Center right now, we're trying to put that into a new type of center that might house the modern dance, also smaller groups that perform in our symphony, which now has a home. I've been very involved over the years with the Nevada Ballet Theater. We also have, oh my goodness, there's so many groups because Las Vegas used to be the home of entertainment, and all these people who play instruments when we had live orchestras, many of them live here, but they're now finding smaller black box theaters in the arts district where they can perform. So everything we're trying to do has to do with energizing the artists that live here. My mother-in-law was a very reputable artist out of Philadelphia. She had art shows here in our libraries, free to the public. And so what we're trying to do, in fact, even downtown in the Fremont East area, there's an old medical building there that used to have very small examining rooms. And one of the people that is invested in the downtown has made those into very small galleries. So someone who does not own a gallery and cannot afford a gallery, for $500 can have their own tiny gallery, whether it's photography, artwork, pastels, clothing, jewelry, any type of art. So very, very much about it. And when we went back for training, when Oscar, my husband, who was turned out, first took office, he said to a very dear friend of ours who was president of the Howard Hughes Corporation at the time, I don't know what to do. What are the most important things when you have a very rotted center city? And the Rouse Company gave us a quick course. Safety, quality medical care, culture. You need to build the cultural base.
Yeah.
And so for his 12 years, and certainly during my 3.5, in addition to the other pieces, it's trying to encourage artists. Before this new city hall took place, in the mayor's office, in the old city hall, I cleaned out all my husband's stuff and junk and welcomed all our artists to come show their paintings and their sculpture, their marble work, their jewelry in City Hall, telling them it was going to be a revolving art gallery, and if somebody wanted to buy something, we would refer them back to the artist. In my office alone, I sold 3 pieces. The new City Hall has nothing but artwork in it, except for a few major pieces. All the artwork, and especially on the 7th floor, is all for the artist, the local artist, to have a show and be able to have the opportunity to change out his work. We have some phenomenal pieces, and yes, the artist is very well represented, and also in the performing arts, not only at Smith Center, but in different smaller black box theaters, which we encourage to take place. So we're on our way. Believe me, we are a long way off, but we're trying step by step by step.
I hope when you re-elect, we can work together.
We have to give Stavros a chance to answer too, though. Stavros, cultural development, how do you plan on continuing to encourage that sort of growth here in Nevada, here in Las Vegas, assuming you are elected?
Well, I think we need to, the City Hall really needs to focus on helping small businesses come to downtown Las Vegas. If you go to the Arts District, most of those places it's one person who owns a little studio that's trying to sell the stuff that he or she makes. And the city should be in a position to help that person out the best they can. Help them with the regulations to open up their little studio. Help them with the licensing to open up the little studio. Help them with all the red tape and bureaucracy that goes into opening up a business. If we help these folks do that, then they can focus on the cultural aspects of what they want to do. And when one comes down there, another one's going to come down, and then the whole area starts to develop. So that's what I want to do as mayor, is to tell people that this is a business-friendly place to come to downtown Las Vegas. We're going to help you the best we can. And it's already starting, and I just want to continue that.
And Mimi, I think you have one last question. We're out of time, and I apologize for having to get up during the beginning of the last question. That was actually your fellow council person, Lois Tarkanian, calling me on the phone. She's appearing telephonically, but I told her that we'd be getting back to her in a few minutes. So
Actually, I lived in Clark County for 35 years. I watched both Oscar Goodman and Miss Goodman here, Mrs. Goodman here. I think you guys, you have a mother's heart and did a fabulous job for the cities. I watched so many of that old downtown reviving. Now we are competing with the Strip, and I work in the Strip. Seldom, we never want to go down there, but now it's a beautiful cleanup. Strip is being full, and now all Las Vegas is clean. We got to continuously move on to the North Las Vegas. And I must say, it was a phenomenal feeling to see you have decided to bring that 70-foot wall down to break the racism totally out of open all the cities out. But what is your most, if you get elected for the next 4 years, what will be your most important agenda for 2 things for the city that you love so much?
And I'll have to limit you, I'm sorry, Carolyn, I'll have to limit you to about, turns out we have about 6 more questions to ask of you, each of you, I should say. So I'll ask you to limit your responses to about a minute or 2 as best as possible. Well, obviously you'll both get an opportunity to answer though.
Well, why don't you let him go first, and I'll take up his rest of his minutes.
All right, I guess I'll give you three things. First of all, we won't be building a publicly funded stadium downtown. That's not going to happen. So let's get that out of the way. The first thing is I want to bond that $60 million and start a master plan for the entire city of Las Vegas for parks, recreation centers, community centers, resource centers. So I want to spend 4 years. It's going to take 4 years to spend that money and build things that are important to the community. That's number one. Number two is I want to focus like a laser beam on the medical district and bringing the UNLV Medical School into that medical district and create a health science excellence area for everybody in Las Vegas. And number three is, I'm going to be out there all over the community listening to folks and finding out what's important to them and how they want their tax dollars spent and what is it that impacts them every single day that the city's not doing. So those are probably the 3 things I'll be doing for 4 years.
And that was perfectly within 1 minute, so I appreciate that. The challenge is on you, Carolyn.
Okay. Because there are so many things afloat right now, to tell you to pick exactly 3, we have so many issues with which we're dealing, and gambling's all over this country. So this community has to be working all the time on innovative ways to bring those tourist dollars in. First and foremost on my list is always working for safety. We are in a horrible position now worldwide with terrorism. I have been back to Emmitsburg, Maryland for the Federal Emergency Management Training. I spent a whole week there. This is a huge issue for us in this entire community. We have Nellis, we have Creech, we are extremely vulnerable, and this is a very, very serious program and problem for us. So safety and everything that I can do to make sure that we have a safe community. If we are not safe, there are no people living here, and there's no future investment coming in. That is the single most prioritized issue. Secondarily, I go back, of course, parents will not stay here, people will not move here if we do not improve the quality of our medical care. I have been very involved with this from day one. A piece of it is that medical school, a piece of it. but it is what is causing the problem that we, in these years, have not been able to create a medical center where people come in. There are issues, they're up at the legislature. I've been talking about it for 3.5 years. It's finally made to the legislature. It started right here with my mouth, and I have a bully pulpit to make that happen. And then the other pieces all fall together. The entire quality of education. Businesses aren't going to come here if our public school education stays where it is. It's jobs, it's the homeless, it's still the foreclosure. It is transportation and moving. And so the list goes on, and the mayor's job is to work in as many areas as possible. But safety is critical, and medical care is absolutely paramount, and education and the jobs and the homeless and everything else.
Thank you.
Okay. Kevin, I think you were going to finish this up quickly, please.
One of you will be our mayor, and as mayor of our city, you're like the parents of our city. Your words will be around, will be repeated, and here's something I did like to share. I'm a father of 5. And as my daughter, when they're in their 3rd grade in the 90s, they came back and tell me, Dad, my friend said they don't want to go to school anymore. They don't need to go to college. What for? Because their parents make more money working in the casino. That had been lingering over my head for many years. And I've seen the result. We've been doing these interviews every year with all the elected politicians. And here's something I'd like to share with you. This is what my finding is. And maybe, with your word, it beats 10,000 of me. The problem that begins is our little kids, what they are getting in school. The kindergartner, the grade school kids, which my son is in as a 2nd grader. We have no any kind of ethics education in school. They're just learning skills. And that I honestly wish, and that's what we have been working toward in the cultures, teaching as the little effort that we can put in here, teaching kids of ethics and value. Now, people are going to tell me, well, church and state don't mix. And I'm so happy that I hear Marilyn say a little while ago, I'm working with a community leader. I'm working with the churches. Well, churches are, in America, is our base fundamental value here. They ought to be able to put some kind of program together as after school for our little kid. They ought to have some kind of information that what's right and what's wrong. It's much, much, much easier to teach a little kid from their teacher when they see them as super role model. I understand there are things that cannot be mixed, but it's an elective course for the parents. And when we're talking about education, that's where the fundamental problem began. If they're not educated, when they come into junior high school and high school, then we can forget about it. That's something I'd like to share. Yes, Mayor.
I would like to say this and do it very quickly.
Yes.
It all starts with home. It all starts with the parent. I have 4 children.
Yes.
They are adopted
Yes.
at 3 days of age. 8 different genetic pools of information in these children.
Yes.
They were raised the right way. 3 of the 4 went entirely through this public school system. My daughter went through 5th grade in the public school system.
Yes.
They all live here. They all have 4 years of college and all have a graduate degree. It
Yes.
starts in the home every single way. And if in fact a school is failing, it's up to the parent to go in and make that school the best it can be.
Yes.
Our inner city schools need the most concentration because the more affluent the area, the more control that group has over that school and that district. But it all starts right here. It's not there. It's right here with the parent.
Agreed.
And then being involved in it. But when you take 4 children, and the most beautiful part of my children is they're good people. Each one of them is a beautiful, caring child. And when they would come home at different ages, well, Johnny does this or Mary can do that, I would say, fine, not in this house. We love you. You're going to live by our standards until you're an adult and you'll choose. We always listen to you. And sometimes you're right, but not too often, because you're a child who has to learn. And yes, we have a flawed education system. But if it's not about us making a difference and doing it and using our bully pulpit and having that voice.
Yes, absolutely.
Change. So you have 5 children, I have 4, we have 4. It works well as long as you stay with them, and it does help if you have a religious base. That really makes a huge difference. But there are many people and children who grew up without affiliation with a religious body, and they turn out all right. But it starts with the parent.
I agree.
So
I agree.
That's what I would say.
But again, the mayor cannot legislate parents being
Of course,
good.
of
Just
course.
like when we've asked this question to
Like it.
legislatures,
She would like to.
the state assembly can't do it, the state senate can't do it.
Of
We've heard
course.
this question more than once though from Kevin. So,
That's right, he's passionate about it.
and he is, and rightfully so.
I agree.
Mike, please finish us up.
I want to
Please.
request, that
Please.
most of us have not been to the new city hall, and if you would like to come there
You're
and get
welcome.
a tour of the new city hall, we'd appreciate it.
We would absolutely love to show you all the way through it so you can see the council chambers. It's absolutely a magnificent, magnificent structure. And you are welcome to come. I know Stavros would do the same. Welcome you. We would love to have
We'd be
you
honored.
meet all of them.
Yes,
So all you
we'd be
have to
honored,
do is call the mayor's
I'd love
office.
to-
Cheryl will set it up.
Okay,
Cheryl.
thank you very much.
Thank
Good.
you.
Field trip. Well, again.